Sorry. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another talk as part of Youth for Europe series of talks. Today we have with us Anna Cavazzini, a member of the European Parliament, and we will be going through two proposals that were created by two of the participants. They are part of Youth for Europe. So Youth for Europe is an European project funded by Erasmus Plus that gives young people the opportunity not only to learn about the political system in Europe, but also to give them a voice and gives them a chance to create a policy proposal based in three topics: media, environment, and education and youth employment. Today, we'll be talking about two proposals that focus on media. And we have two participants with us. We have Francesco and Nicole, who were two Youth for Europe participants, like myself. I was a participant. I was trained in Romania as a youth facilitator, and then I was a youth leader in a youth exchange in Hungary. I'll give Francesco and Nicole a chance to introduce themselves later on, but now I'd like to pass on to our speaker, Anna Cavazzini, which is part of the group of Greens in the European Free Alliance. Sorry. She's also vice chair on the delegation for relations with the Federation Republic of Brazil, a member on the Committee on International Trade, and also a substitute on the Committee on the International Market and Consumer Protection. Hannah, thank you very much for joining us. How are you today?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Pleasure.
Thank you for sparing a couple of minutes to be here with us. I'd like to pass on the floor to you right now. If you could just give us a brief introduction about yourself and your career and your role in the European Parliament.
Yeah, thanks, Anna, for the introduction. Indeed, my name is Anna Cavazzini. I'm a recently elected MEP. Basically, today it is 1 year already. Time passes by quicker than I want. Basically, I also started my political activities in some youth movements. So I find it very, very interesting to talk to you today because I think basically young people have so many good ideas, are full of initiatives that are important for the future. And that's why in general, I think they should have much more to say in politics. I started basically with the youth wing of the Green Party, really on a very local level, fighting for more bicycle lanes or fair trade coffee in my university, these kind of things. And then, also the first thing I ever organized was Europe Youth in Action program with the EU money, meeting some Czech young people and some Polish young people in Germany and organizing youth exchanges on EU level. So I really also think the more young people are active in European affairs, the more, of course, they are interested in EU politics, because my special passion for the EU really came from these programs, exchange programs, when I was very young. In the last couple of years, I worked at the United Nations in New York. I was working at the EU before, and also at a couple of German NGOs, mostly on development cooperation, international solidarity, and globalization. And that's also my big passion for basically the European Parliament. I really try to work on fairer trade policies. At the moment, I'm very much occupied with what is happening in Brazil. The Amazon is getting deforested more and more, and our trade policy will contribute to that. So this is one of my big issues at the moment. I am representing the regions of Saxony and Saxony-Anhalt in the European Parliament. That's basically Eastern Germany, and also a very interesting region with a lot of polarization in society. And that's why for me it is also very important to not only try to work in Brussels, in the European Parliament on legislation, which is important, but also trying to really reach out to basically my constituency, to work with young people in Saxony, to try to go to schools, to explain what we are doing in Europe, and trying to also get some feedback on the work we are doing and bring that back to Brussels. So I'm looking forward to the exchange with you today. And I have read your proposals, and I'm looking forward to discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that introduction, and also for sharing your journey and where it started, and which I think could be an inspiration for a lot of young people that start off like us in youth exchanges, in different youth projects. It shows them that later on they can become a member of the European Parliament. And I'd also like to say congratulations on your work anniversary. I would like now to pass on the floor to Francesco, which is one of the participants, and he will start. He will introduce himself and then talk about his proposal and his group. Francesco, whenever you're ready.
Here I am. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to Anna Cavazzini for being here, at least virtually, and thanks to Anna Mona for your wonderful presentation of us. I'm Francesco Gazzo, and I'm here to present you in Media We Trust, creating a tool that can help raise the transparency of the media. The proposal I work on during my exchange of Youth for Europe in Spain. We were a group of 4 people, Anna Elena Juncker, myself, Luca Boissat, and Paulo Iordache. We started thinking about what is the main issue regarding media and web. By the brainstorming method, we found out the magic trio, what we call the magic trio, fake news leading to propaganda and manipulation. But let's try to figure out better the problem. First of all, fake news is a tool used by influencers, usually manipulated in order to make a statement which may not be the truth. The reader has a general lack of education when selecting their news source. There's a big issue with lack of transparency of the media. And the best example we can give is the Facebook Cambridge Analytica, where manipulation was used to collect data from Facebook accounts of the users in order to determine their perspective via Brexit. That's why I'm here to present our solution, a seal of approval awarded by the European Union. Because in order to sensitize the masses, you must raise the overall awareness of the readers. The public are the biggest contributors to this change. With the necessary knowledge, they will be able to filter the information they are reading on the internet, reducing the gap between nations and securing the future of the European Union. We also thought to the possible way to do it. In our idea, the European Commission, through the EACA International Agency, and later by the national agencies, can agree on a general framework regulating the way the seal of approval is awarded and who can apply to it. The concept is that the interested media can apply for by submitting the necessary application to the relevant national audiovisual agency, so as not to infringe upon freedom of speech. The seal is absolutely not mandatory. It is thought after a certification of quality of the presented data. Of course, after reviewing each case, the agency can give either a positive or a negative response, and if in a time frame of 12 months, in ideal time period, if the respective media does not publish fake news or propaganda material, exercise a high degree of neutrality, and as best as possible provide only facts, they will be awarded the quality mark. Then, with our beautiful faces, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you very much for presenting your proposal. I think it's really interesting. I'll pass on the floor now to Anna. If you could just provide Francesco with some feedback on the proposal that he just presented.
Yeah, thanks, Francesco, I think, and of course also your co-developers of the idea, basically. I think it is really, really interesting to think about different ideas of how to counter fake news, because it's a very fluid debate, I would say. It's very up to date. You mentioned all the different scandals and problems we had in the past, but I also have the feeling on the same time also politicians, lawmakers don't have the ready-made, tailor-made answer yet. So it's very, very important to really brainstorm and look for different ways of how to counter the problem. I think in some, and this is probably also what you find out in your research when you thought about this proposal, in some national contexts, there is already a quite good legislation that just have to be used a little bit better. For example, people who see fake news, they can also just bring a legal case, basically, and then the media has to take it back. There's also different websites and projects who really scan for fake news. Probably you're familiar with Hoaxmap. They're really like specializing on fake news, wrong stories on refugees, related to refugees. There is also, interestingly, some EU-funded projects that try to, that go a little bit in the same direction, like a kind of a test or something for fake news. And also, I think the big platforms, like, for example, Facebook, have also, put in place at least some mechanism. It doesn't work 100% well yet, but a mechanism that tries to filter out fake news. So there is a lot of things going on. The idea of this like seal of approval I've never heard before, so clearly it is, to my eyes, like very innovative. I was indeed having two questions that are probably a little bit something we should discuss. One is the freedom of opinion. I mean, this is always the question when you have to deal with fake news. Where does it start and where does freedom of opinion basically start and where does it end? And I can imagine that such a seal of approval will probably also kind of really trigger in the right-wing populist movements some counter argument. Now the EU is trying to dictate us what kind of news we are watching or not, because we have it already, at least in Germany, but probably also in other states, with the public media. I mean, the public media in Germany, for example, the public television, has already, of course, a kind of seal of approval because it's politically controlled. But then there is a big group of people in Germany who don't trust them anymore because it's like state media. So I think this is always a little bit the problem, I would say. And then the question is if this seal is voluntary. I was also wondering, does it really at the end help something? Because like if then all the classical fake news portals would never apply for the seal, because of course they would never get it. But then do people who really, I mean, consume these kind of fake news portals, do they care about the seal? So this is a little bit, these are like two questions I just had, because I think it's also interesting to really also try to find the weak spots in all the proposals, but I think it's really cool. It's very innovative. I haven't seen it before. So probably you can answer to some of my questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your feedback, Anna. I'm sure, Francesco, if we have time later on, it will probably be able to answer your questions and provide you with some more information about his proposal in Media We Trust. I would now like to pass the floor on to Nicole, who is one of the participants, part of the Check It group, and she will present her proposal and talk a little bit more about her group. Nicole, I'll pass the floor on to you whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Okay, hello. My group is called Check It. So in my group, we have Natalie, Anas, myself, Jane, Thomas, Sarah, and Beppe. We as young people want the European Union to take steps to combat the spread of misinformation and entrust the people to think independently, to encourage critical thinking and the pursuit of truth. We believe the problem is fake news. Fake news is apparent in many of the contexts in our everyday life. Political agendas are promoted through misleading headlines. Children and teenagers are aspiring to impossible body standards set by Photoshop. Will consuming disinfectant cure COVID-19? These are some of the statements that we hear. The data in this graph shown is from the Eurobarometer survey, which was conducted in all member states in 2018. Over 26,000 citizens were interviewed about their perception of fake news and their trust in news media sources. The findings show a clear concern for the spread of disinformation and fake news. Even though there's 71% are somewhat confident that they can identify fake news. There's only 15% who actually are very confident. So we find this very concerning. Moreover, the results of the rest of the survey show that fake news is widely spread across Europe, with 83% of the respondents saying that fake news represents a danger to democracy. Provide them with the tools and skills to critically evaluate fake news spread on social media. We want the EU to fund the creation of the Check It software, a culmination of pre-existing tools at just one click. The pre-installed app on your phone will be available to download on other devices. Check It will tell you if an image has been photoshopped, if an article has been plagiarized, and if a video has been manipulated. To coincide with the development of the software, awareness of the existence of misleading and false information, to encourage critical thinking and promote fact-checking while on social media. Furthermore, to help users understand Check It, tutorials will be attached to the software. Check It gives consumers more clarity over the origins of their information and can therefore aid them in making more informed choices regarding how they absorb and share the information online. We think our proposal encourages the media to be more transparent, responsible, and holds them more accountable for the information they release. We want to equip European citizens with the ability to critically evaluate the information presented to them in order to recognize fake news and news intended to cause division. We want the truth. Let's put an end to the mindless sharing of misinformation. Check It is a free, accessible fact-checking tool that will be available to everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Nicole. And thank you very much for providing us with more information about Check It. I'll pass on the floor now to Anna to provide Nicole and her group with some feedback about their policy proposal.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nicole, for the excellent presentation. I mean, as a politician, I can also just say that these manipulated photos are really a problem. Some of my colleagues had already been really affected by that. For example, when some right-wing faked news of my faked a photo of my party colleague Claudia Roth, like she's in Germany a big figure and a hatred figure of the right wing, and then they just manipulated some photos, and then but of course it also happens more subtle as you were describing, and it's clearly a big problem. I find two things very interesting on that proposal. One is, of course, that the EU in general has the capacity of funding mostly via the Horizon 2020 framework, like this big research framework, some interesting projects, like, for example, the development of such an app. As I mentioned before, I've found one similar project that is called Social Truth, where like it's not exactly an app, but the EU also funds like a kind of a project that really tries, like a website or something that tries to find fake news. So it's very similar, and it can very well happen mostly via the Horizon 2020 project. So this is in general quite good idea. What I also find interesting of this proposal, it is a little bit connected also to the question of a general public platform. I don't know if you have heard of the proposal that there is some people demanding even like the EU creating like a bigger like platform that has different functions, a little bit something like similar to social media, Facebook, whatever, but then also of course some other functions like a little bit like the app you're describing. And at the moment it is therefore also an idea of counterbalancing a little bit the only American companies that are there for like social media and tech. So basically your proposal reminded me a little bit of that. To me, it seems very, very practical to have this photo check. I was wondering probably what have you thought about the following steps? So basically me, I'm seeing a fake photo and then I'm running it through the app. Did you also think about, is there some automatic mechanism in the app that kind of, informs the social media platform or whatsoever? So, or do I still have to, as a user, connect to the social media platform or to the newspaper and make the step of complaining? Did you think about the app only as a technological thing to find the fake photo, or is it like a bigger process? This is probably my question. And then, as I said, I find it's a quite good proposal, and I think it is already like some similar projects are already being developed on EU level, and probably it's a good idea to connect with them. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. Thank you very much for your feedback and for the questions that you asked. I'll give Nicole a chance to perhaps answer some of those questions later on in the talk. But now I would like to open the floor to questions, and I'll probably go with Francesco first. So Francesco, if you want to ask your question, and also if you still remember some of the questions Anna asked in relation to your proposal, if you want, I'll give you a chance now to answer some of those.
Okay, thanks. For a brief answer to your second question, I mean, we know that of course people can say, okay, but Europe is going to order what is fake news and what is not. But this is not the meaning of our proposal. I mean, it's more a tool that can raise awareness of people. I mean, like for example, a shared post on Facebook where an influencer, a public figure, published some news. There is the seal of approval saying this is a trustful newspaper or not. This is more or less the idea. And then I'd like to ask you, what do you think about public figures that use fake news as a tool?
Okay, thank you, Francesco.
Thank you.
Anna? I'll give you a chance now to answer Francesco's question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I would say it happens a lot that a lot of public figures use wrong information, sometimes also kind of unconsciously. So for example, sometimes in talk shows, more and more like talk shows providers also do a fact check at the end to see if the numbers that were like discussed or like the facts that some of the politicians propose are really correct. And I think I had already seen also like normal democratic politicians doing mistakes. And I would say the first thing is that every one of us should be really, really careful in checking all the numbers that we are using and not trying to disseminate wrong information, which is probably not the same thing like fake news, but still trying to be really, really accurate and exact in everything that we are doing. Of course, there is people who do use fake news on purpose. I mean, I think I don't have to name any names. You all know what I'm talking about, and this is of course a very, very dangerous strategy, I would say. And the problem is that it is even for most of the electorate of those people not a problem anymore. So basically, they know that, for example, Trump is using only basically fake news, but his electorate doesn't seem to care. And this is, I think, the next step in the escalation that we're seeing in society, because I think a couple of years ago it was still a little bit different, that people were at least then thinking that it's a scandal or something, but this is not the case anymore, except especially for the part that voted for him or is voting for him, and we see it in a lot of different countries. And yeah, this is also something we really have to be careful about, I think.
Thank you. Yes, I think it is nowadays in the world that we live in. I think it's one of the things that politicians need to be really worried about, is where does the electorate get the information from, because that can, I'd say, that can shape the way they vote or the way they decide to go with the things that they do in their life. But yeah, thank you very much for your answer, Anna. I'll pass on the floor now to Nicole. Nicole, I'll give you a chance to ask your question and also to answer the questions that Anna asked regarding your proposal.
Thank you, Anna, for your feedback. Just to answer one of your questions that you asked about the proposal, we actually didn't think of the app providing a complaint system. It was more about giving the consumers a choice to whether they can see where the information's come from or if the image has been doctored, and then they're making their informed decision. But we also thought of the campaign to teach people how to critically evaluate the information, rather than we taking that step to then form the complaint. So I'd just like to ask you a question. How do you think the European elections in 2019 were impacted by fake news?
Okay, thank you very much for answering the questions, Nicole, and also thank you for the questions that you posed. Anna, I'll pass on the floor to you now.
Yeah, thanks for this very relevant question. I think that there was a big fear that the European elections will be really widely influenced by fake news, after we have seen the American elections where this basically happened. And we saw already before the elections some of the suspects, for example, Stephen Bannon, you know, and all the others who kind of also trained a little bit their fake news spreading in the US campaign, coming to Europe before the elections, connecting to different mostly kind of right-wing parties in Europe. So this was very worrisome. I have the feeling, contrary to this huge fear, it was not as strong as we all had feared. I mean, that there was a big organized campaign on misinformation from the outset. Let's put it like this. But still, of course, always when it comes to the European Union, there is a lot of misinformation being spread. For example, I was also at a lot of panel discussions, obviously, in Saxony and everywhere in Germany, where also a lot of misinformation about the European Parliament was like spread. And obviously the people who came to me on the panel or when I was like campaigning on the street and confronting me with this, they must have read it somewhere. So for example, things like, MEPs earn 30,000 euros per month or something, which is bullshit, sorry to say, or like things like this, like where you could really see there is a lot of misinformation around. I could also see it again, and this is a very big topic on misinformation on refugees. Although the big refugee crisis was over, especially in those polarized regions where I campaigned, there was still a lot of fear about the refugee wave coming over and whatever, and then also related to that a lot of misinformation. And the last thing I noticed was also a lot of misinformation on climate change. Basically, because at least in Germany, it was a very big topic because of Fridays for Future, which also caused a lot of counter arguments. And for example, things like windmills kill all the birds or whatsoever, like all these kind of things. I really noticed at the election campaign stands on the streets that people came to me that they brought up all this information. So to summarize it, I would say it was probably not the big organized disinformation campaign we expected, but still a lot of wrong arguments, especially in the field of EU in general, climate and refugees. This is what I can say from a very subjective perspective.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer, Anna. It seems to me, at least what I got from your answer, is that fake news has become part of people's lives. Unfortunately, something that didn't exist a couple of years ago now plays a really big part on everyone's lives. I've received a lot of questions, but we only have 10 minutes left, so pass on to receive the question from Olga in Hungary. Thank you very much for sending your question, Olga. So the question is, data shows that a lot of young people are facing mental health issues related to the huge amount of negativity and fear we are exposed to every day in the media. Will the European Union implement strategies to fight against this? So I suppose fight against the misinformation and the negativity that is leading to mental health issues in young people.
Should I directly answer? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the EU developed an action plan on disinformation that has a lot of different puzzle parts. For example, basically better coordination and trying to exchange best practices of the national authorities who work on that, or getting in direct dialogue with social media platforms, and so on and so on. To my knowledge, there's not any legislation planned, but of course we have the big reform of how the digital market works. So the Digital Services Act is coming, and I'm sure there will be also a lot of little pieces on disinformation on that. I have the feeling, to everyone I speak in Brussels, the problem is really on top of the agenda. So I have the feeling the awareness of the problem is really there, and I think it is probably always a thin line between how much competence the EU also has at the end, because a lot of things have to be regulated nationally, but then of course also using the joint power of the EU and of the big market to put things forward, especially also vis-a-vis the huge social media companies, which are not very easy to deal with.
Yeah, thank you very much for your answer, Anna. We only have 4 minutes left, so I'll try and squeeze in another question. So if you could just answer in a few words. So the question is from Beppe in Italy. As a source of power, the EU also needs its own narratives at a geopolitical level. What can the EU do to tackle fake news coming from outside, but also not to create its own fake news? I know it's a big question, and it might be difficult to answer in a couple of sentences.
Yeah, it's a very big question and probably worth a topic of another session. But very, very quickly, the new Commission and the new Commission President von der Leyen really made this geopolitical commission as one of the main focus points of the next 5 years of this commission. And this means basically, on the one hand, defending human rights and EU values and everything abroad, but of course also kind of protecting the EU from let's put it like this, disinformation, fake news from outside. So I think there is a shift in the thinking of the new commission that is much more having this international dimension on board. But this is a very brief answer. I could talk much longer about this, but
yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry to have given you such a big question at the end. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us today for this talk and for the feedback that you provided to the 2 participants. I think I can speak on behalf of everyone to say that it's comforting to know that fake news is on the at the top of the agenda in the European Union that is being thought and being discussed by everyone. I would also like to thank Francesco and Nicole for presenting your proposals, and I hope that we will have a chance all to meet in Brussels in the autumn and perhaps talk a bit more about fake news and about the proposals, taking into account that fake news is such a popular topic. I would also like to let everyone know on Facebook that there will be more talks. If you want to know more information about Youth for Europe, go on our website, youthforeurope.eu, and you can also get some more information on our Facebook page and on our Instagram page, where we'll be promoting the next round of talks, and you will also be able to take part and ask more questions on talks regarding the environment, media, education, and youth employment. Thank you very much for joining us today.